Welcome to the Craig and Greg Show, presented by Maximize Leadership. Here are Craig Owens and Greg Harris.
Hey, welcome to the Craig and Greg Show. I'm Craig. This is Greg. We never want a single day to be wasted. We want to take advantage of every single day and get the best that we can out of it. And so I love the quote from Charlie Chaplin that said, if you have a day without any laughter in it, you've wasted the day. Mm-hmm. What do you think about leaders and laughter?
Boy, sometimes they don't go together. I've been in a few meetings with partners and clients, et cetera, and you think, okay, well, someone's got to lighten this up a little bit.
They're like this.
Oh, yeah, it's got the number 11, or maybe 111 or 1,011. You're like, oh, my goodness, you just look like a scowl. So I think sometimes humor just kind of creates an entrance of, you just relax a little bit. It's interesting physiologically. You're the pre-med guy. How many muscles does it take to smile, and how many muscles does it take to frown?
Well, I know it's a lot more to frown.
And what do we do?
Yeah.
We frown.
Yeah.
It's like it's almost have to practice.
Yeah.
I think that's where the message for leaders is: practice humor, practice laughing. Yeah, I just think it's awesome. Yeah.
Well, I remember years ago reading where somebody was saying if you're on the phone with somebody, it's a good idea to have a mirror up there to look at yourself, because turning that frown around, so that you're smiling when you're on the phone does convey it. Somebody else can hear the smile on the other side of the phone. Mm-hmm. But I loved how you've shared with me before when you were going into a sales meeting, how you prepared yourself to be able to go into this meeting. Share that story.
Well, yeah. So you're on the road. You're building business. You're meeting people, trying to move prospects to become customers or clients. And so on the road, it's like, okay, I'm antsy. You got traffic. You're running a little late. Maybe you're kind of nervous about the meeting. And I learned after about 2 cycles of in sales years, I got to come into this meeting different. Otherwise, they're just going to read me. Hence the leadership. Here's your cue. They're reading us as leaders.
Sure.
I would come into a meeting and they would be like, what's so funny? I didn't have a mirror when I walked in and thinking, here's a couple of proposals, let's look at this or talk about contracts. And they're like, well, you look happy. I'm thinking, so others don't?
Right.
And so I would listen to humor on the radio. So XM radio could have humor stations, and some of them, or I put something in that I wanted to hear, a podcast, but I think it really does change your countenance, even the smile or the eyes, whatever they sense. And humans are good at that. They sense. And so I used to do that just to kind of change who I was coming into the meeting after driving an hour. And then what are you going to do in the meeting? Sit down, and you just have no mojo.
Yep.
So.
Well, I think that's a good idea for leaders, even if they're not traveling anywhere. If you got a staff meeting coming up and you've been in your office and you're on a phone call and you're dealing with problems, like you said earlier, a lot of times the idea of leaders and laughter don't really go together. As leaders, we have to deal with a lot of issues, a lot of problems. But I think that even just that pause before you go into that meeting to just, look at a Calvin and Hobbes comic book, or I knew that one would get you. Or just listening to something for just a couple of minutes before you go into that meeting. Because if you walk into the meeting and your shoulders are still all hunched up, you put everybody else on edge as soon as you come in. But if you come in and you're relaxed and you're smiling, they can see it in your eyes and in your face. They're more receptive to be able to receive that.
So long story short on the travel, so I got my big D cup here for Detroit, and one of my clients in Detroit, but there's no straw, you can't, it's my drink. So I go into this meeting, and one of the guys in the meeting goes, "You're different." And it was about laughter, about joy. And I said, well, let me tell you about a funny story I just heard coming in, if it's okay. And I shared a story, it was appropriate, and their countenance just changed. They had that, suit, look, and you're like, oh, this is going to be tough. I'm going to have to grease the skids on this one.
Right.
Well, and speaking of having fun, I really do think as leaders, people want to follow someone not just to win the game, but to have fun while you practice, fun on the journey. Yep. And I think that's just something that's almost catchy. So I like to prank, and I'll have that on a few of my social media sites. But generally speaking, my friends don't give me the house keys to watch their house while they're gone on vacation. They've just learned the hard way that things will just look different when they come back if they allow me to help them.
Well,
And pranking, I think, is a help, but they didn't see it that way.
I know that you and I have a couple of mutual friends that the pranks between the two of them started escalating, and everybody was trying to draw us into participating.
Yeah, there's a sense. And at what point, for us leaders, okay, enough's enough.
Right.
That prank, that could do bodily harm. That I'm not going to do it. Or, ooh, that would definitely hurt their property.
Yeah, exactly. But I think even within our teams, there is an appropriate use of humor, and I think it's the laughing with someone, but not laughing at someone. And what would you be looking at if you were going? I think we're going a little bit too far with making fun of so and so or teasing somebody about something. How do you know when you're getting to that spot where you're crossing the line?
I'm going to throw two big words at us leaders who are going to learn how to do this a little better, and we all do it. We all got to learn and improve. There's an ignorance about humor that really takes a leader down if they're not a little aware of audience or appropriateness, or how would that be received, or will that help us move the ball down the field? Sure. And then the arrogance is the other piece, like, hey, I'm the leader. I can say whatever I want and don't call me on the carpet, but you can't say it because you're the minion.
Yes.
And I think the ignorance, arrogance has caught so many leaders. I will give people a little grace in this story about, as you listen, jokes, humor, there's a little hypersensitivity that can happen in society. And I think we have to be aware of it, but really don't have to avoid it, because humor is such a gift. It's such a gift.
Well, I love, Victor Borga, the great, piano player, and he was always joking. He said laughter makes the shortest distance between two people.
It is true.
But it's when you can get on the same page and you're laughing together, not I'm laughing at you because, boy, you said something really stupid. Yeah. This person tripped when they came in the room. Let's laugh at them. Yeah. And I think that for leaders, the best thing is when we can start laughing at ourselves. Yes. When we can say, "Oh man, did I blow it right there?" And we can make the joke about ourselves. I mean, because think about what that does for the rest of our team.
Well, it almost allows them to feel, oh, he's not perfect, or she's just untouchable. Yeah. When you have some laughter, hey, I got to tell you a funny story that happened to me, and then all of a sudden people are like, oh, yeah, he's human. She's real. That's great. Yep. I think the part where jokes, humor, there's a place for leaders to avoid picking on, and there's a place for leaders to say picking up. Could be the pace, could be the mood, could be someone who is kind of struggling. Hey, Mary, contribute here to something funny or wise. Just, I know you have a lot in there. That's good. And they're like, oh, so you want me to share something funny? I mean, you almost have to give them permission to say, it's okay. It's not a huge faux pas or a big mistake if you take a joke. Now, there are spaces that aren't really very humorous. Right. And I think that's the challenge for all of us, is to make sure that if we go there, we immediately address it. But it is important for us to risk a little bit. I feel the tenseness, the tension in the workplace needs humor to kind of relieve it a bit, water it down.
Yep. Well, we talked on a previous episode about love languages, and I think in love languages, you can learn. When you learn people's love language, you learn how they resolve stress as a result of that too.
Yes.
But one of the things that I think is almost universal, regardless of love language, is that humor. Because I remember reading once talking about emotional health or mental health, somebody talking about laughter is to your emotions, to your inner person, what jogging is to your physical body. Yes. Even like the physical, you kind of bounce when you're laughing, that just kind of like liberates some things. And so I think that it's if we can kind of mix words, it's a serious business when we're talking about humor, because it can do so much good, and yet it's a double-edged sword. Because if you're not careful with that thing, you can cross the line, and then all of a sudden you've got a teammate that's crumbling because people are going, oh, we can make fun of them. Let's pile on. Right. And that's where the leader has to step in.
In one of my groups, working in the company, I feel people are looking for permission to have a little fun, and they're looking to us leaders.
Yes.
That's what they're looking for is it okay to have fun? And it's not a heavy-handed leader. He or she maybe not means it that way, but they just don't want to mess up.
Right.
And if you ask or interview people, and you obviously working with a congregation or a community, I find it fun to ask. So what did you find interesting about her or him? Oh, he makes me laugh.
Yes.
I love that when people say that, because you're like, that is some common ground.
Yes.
Where I can giggle.
Yep.
I'm free. And there's something hearty about that, that feels good about it. There is some stats. I'm not going to bore the viewers, but there is a stat. If you laugh for a half hour, the calories burned is like walking a mile, or some statistic. And I'm like, so laughing does burn calories. We should be laughing more. I remember this because I like kids' books. Don't comment, viewers, in our website or our podcast, but I really like the kids' books because they're really quite innocent humor, you know, and their punchlines are like, I knew that was coming and it's still silly. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
And so I think with humor, it can bring some healing balm too.
Yep.
Where there's tension. We didn't meet our first quarter goals. One of our top managers left for another opportunity, and it's kind of feeling down with the company and your organization, and a little humor around it, a little fun is important.
Yep.
But I want to make sure you don't ask me any questions on past pranks, because this is public.
Right.
This is not confession hour, right?
And there's there's a statute of limitations on some of those.
Some of these, I don't think so.
Yeah, I know. That's why we're still covered underneath those. Some of those things at Hope College. No, we don't want to.
Well, no, we really can't we can't even get to
no.
spaces in which I did make a mistake.
We don't want to go back to that.
Yeah, there's a cool quote. This is an English novelist, Edward Lytton, and his humor quote is quite fascinating. I'm going to read it to you. Humor is the sunshine of the mind. Before we finish up, what happens in our brain with laughter, endorphins and things that, like, you may have maybe a little blood pressure issue, but you laugh, it goes down.
Yep.
So as leaders, we can take good care of ourselves.
Absolutely. And you know what? Not only when you have those endorphins that are released in your brain, not only does it help you, but it also it triggers what they call the mirroring in somebody else. When somebody else sees you kind of go from the frown to the smile, when they see you going from tense to kind of like,
right.
All of a sudden you can see it melting in them as well. They're like, oh, good, we can be able to do this. But I think that, again, to kind of harken back to one of our other episodes, and I challenge our leaders to do this. We talked about in a previous episode about health, and we talked in there about self-care. And I think that leaders, for you to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, that you're laughing, that you're making sure that you're doing that inner jogging and having those endorphins released in yourself is going to go a long way to help your team. And so you're going to have to figure that out for yourself. Where do you feel the stress, that's getting tight in your neck and your shoulders are coming up? How can you relieve that stress so that when you come into these meetings, you're leading even in that way of humor? Can
I give one example? Then you wrap it up. So I was leading a sales organization for a lot of years, and what I learned about our sales meeting is people coming in, they're like, okay, they're going to beat us up on production, whatever they came into the meeting for, right? Beat us up with production. They're going to maybe point out who's not selling, versus the positive. And so I decided to change the agenda, and one of my salespersons who I really enjoyed, and he's got a great sense of humor, and he knew that line of, oh, that's ignorant and arrogant, don't do that. Right. And so I said, hey, Danny, why don't you start off with a joke or two? And that's what we did for years. And people would come to the meeting, with a cup of coffee or, get a bag or whatever, and then I would say, let's start our meeting. They immediately left my eyesight and went to Dan knowing that he was going to actually start with the jokes. And I think they got into, are we going to have to boo him? Or is this like, that is corny, come on. Or, oh my goodness, I can't wait to call my dad.
Right.
So we started our sales meetings off with a humor from one of the sales guys, and it elevated his leadership. And then I found out through the years, he happened to retire recently, through the years, people would come to him and say, hey, I need something funny, which was perfect.
Yeah,
so he became a leader by giving them something to laugh at.
That's right. That's really cool. Well, you know what? Let's do something here. We've kind of had some little contests before, so why don't we do this in the comments below on the video, or if you just want to go to our website maximizeleadership.com and you want to send a comment there. We're going to look for over the next. Let's give them 30 to. Let's do 60 days. You got 60 days from this podcast. Give us your best joke or your best humorous story. And this is going to be totally subjective because we're going to read them and we're going to decide which one we laughed at the most. Yeah. And we're going to get a prize to you. But leaders, find a way to incorporate the humor. At first in yourself, you got to be smiling. You got to be bright-eyed when you go in. Find a way to make sure that humor is appropriate. You're not crossing those lines of ignorance or arrogance. You're not laughing at people, but laughing with them. And watch and see what happens when you start using appropriate humor. I think you're going to see your leadership really go to the next level. We look forward to talking to you soon. Follow us on Twitter and subscribe on YouTube so that you know when the next episode drops. We look forward to seeing you real soon.
Get in touch with Craig and Greg through Twitter at Maximize Podcast or at MaximizeLeadership.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of The Craig and Greg Show.